tuned what's happening, that Obama, the Clintons, and this great elite of Satan worshipers that rule us today, and the deep state and the government that really rules the government, that tells them what to do, that's changing now with the present president, and we thank God for that. But these Satan worshipers are doing things that are really unimaginable, and I won't go into all of it, but it's very bad. What they do to babies, to children 5 and under, it is absolutely unspeakable, and it is definitely satanic. But here we have in Genesis 18 the way that God has to counteract this. They met and ate under an oak tree. Does anybody know what Jesus was crucified with? An oak tree, the wood of an oak tree. So Jesus was here showing what he's going to do. If this is an area right near Jerusalem, in fact. He would die on a tree that was made of oak, so those that believed in him could rest from the torments that were caused by the genetic DNA manipulation that was passed on through the giants. They had a Passover meal. They were sitting just outside of the area that would become Jerusalem, and the significance of this foot washing was tremendous. It became the fourth key to cleansing. Now, obviously, you haven't heard the verse 3, but you will be able to read it in the Encyclopedia of Biblical Understanding, where we'll have all of our A to Zs that we had on our site and much more to be published as a real guide to understand the Bible. And you'll be able to see it all then. Now, then Lot insisted that these angels of God come and feast in his home that night when they arrived in Sodom. That was the night to be much remembered or observed. The time Jesus and the two angels met Abraham was the Passover day. They had the Passover supper together, and then the angels went down into the city of Sodom and looked around at Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were invited into Lot's home. Lot entertained these angels unawares, but he knew they were righteous. Genesis 19:9, the people said, "Stand aside further." They said, "This one came in as an alien sojourner," and already he's acting like a judge. Now in Hebrew, we can basically say that this was an apostle of judgment is with us. We don't want to be corrected by this apostle of judgment. And people poo-poo the fact that they're apostles of judgment. Well, John Hagee is obviously an apostle of judgment. Our apostle is an apostle of judgment. And this is not directly in the Bible, but the principle is there. The judges of the First Testament were apostles of judgment. And they feared this man, that these angels are going to be judging them. And what do people fear today? They fear correction because it hurts. But I'm very thankful for the correction I received when I came and I saw our apostle in a church service, and I said, for once, God actually spoke to me. I didn't know about hearing from God. And he said, he's the one you need to go to. Not these pastors, but this man will teach you how to be healed. And he did. But he confronted me, and he told me what was the problem. He said, you have talked about forgiving your boss, but you've never forgiven him. It's all talk. In your heart, you have never forgiven him. That was a correction, but it was a correction that saved my life and allowed me to be healed of two very serious diseases. So I thank God for that. These people didn't want to hear the apostle of judgment, the judge of this angel. And that's what most people today fight. They fight being corrected. The whole Christian world is fighting that correction today. These angels were there to do what? To execute judgment. They found Lot to be righteous. Now, none of Lot's married daughters wanted to leave this hellhole. He could only take his two unmarried daughters and his wife. But Mrs. Lot, rather. We don't know her name, but Mrs. Lot was caught up in the immorality and the evil entertainment. She was being entertained sexually, and she didn't want to leave. And she turned back, of course, as you remember, and became a pillar of salt. She longed for the pleasures of sin. And this is something we need to be aware of when it comes to unleavened bread, a time of getting rid of sin, that we don't long for those pleasures. It was an unusual thing when we read it today, but it was a common practice to release the daughters rather than injure a sojourner or a stranger that came in under the roof. I mean, we've been to Africa. Jerry here has been to Africa, and you know they have a great hospitality. The stranger who comes is king. I mean, they will treat you like a king, because that's what they did in the olden times, in Hebrew times, and that was what they did here. They would prefer to give their daughter than to dishonor the guest. The days of unleavened bread began at the time Lot brought these two angels into his home. It's a lesson for us. Don't look back to the ways of sin. The days of unleavened bread represented a forced cleansing by fire. What is not freely turned over, all that falseness of the world, which has been picked up, as well as all the dust of the ground, this sin is consumed in fire. Just like in the end time, all evil will be burnt up and will be destroyed. The unleavened bread is to get rid, the unleavened bread feast is to get rid of all the falseness in our lives. God wants us to get rid of it all, to surrender it to Jesus. Genesis 19:30-38 shows this. Lot's daughters were infatuated by the Sodomites' practices and were willing to practice witchcraft upon their father rather than trusting God to provide husbands for them. The first child of the older sister was named Moab, and which literally means coming from the mother's father. It was incest. The second daughter's name was, the child's name was Ben-Ami, or Ammonite, son of overshadowing by my father the man. Now this is what it means. She had a son because she overshadowed, overcame, took possession of her father as a man, as a male. They were practicing the ways of the Sodomites. A father and a mother were given no respect. The children could rape them at any time. It was expected they would do this whenever they felt like it. It was a real abominable society. Now, Abraham's sacrifice of his son is a powerful story in Genesis 22. Maybe we don't understand until we understand exactly what it went through. It's a horrible thing for a man to give up his own son. But our Father in heaven gave up his son for us. And he was testing Abraham, but also he was opening a door. And Abraham knew when it said in Genesis 22:2, God said, Jesus said, take now your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love. There's a lot of your sons in there. He was emphasizing something. He said, Isaac, your only son. He was emphasizing what? That Isaac was his gift for cleansing, to be cleansed. It was giving up Isaac, was allowing him to be cleansed, and even the land to be cleansed. Remember when they sat under that oak tree? Abraham came and washed the feet of Jesus and the two angels that served him bread and wine. He gave him his covenant son, but he was showing something important. He was showing that he could cancel death's hold on a person's body. Isaac was never really in danger in actually being burnt as an offering, but God had to open a doorway to claiming a people he could purify or cleanse from all the effects of the giants. He also had to have Abraham open a doorway for God's blessings and provide the procedures for cleansing and limit the number of days it would take. Part would be man's responsibility. Now, after Abraham and Isaac built the altar for Passover sacrifice on Mount Moriah, did you get that? Mount Moriah. Do you know why Mount Moriah is important? Because that is where Jesus was sacrificed, on Mount Moriah. Abraham bound to Isaac, a young man of about 20 years of age, laid him on the altar. And now Abraham is already 120. Can you imagine a man of 120 trying to wrestle with a 20-year-old and say, get down there, I'm going to have to kill you? No, it wasn't like that. Just like with Jesus, he willingly gave himself up. Isaac said, Daddy, I know I trust you and I trust Jesus, and I'm going to put this into your hands and submit to you willingly. What a powerful thing. He was willing to cut his throat because he knew that either he would be resurrected, but God was in charge. Jesus would take care of it. He wasn't worried. He walked out in faith. What an example for us. That'll be part 2.